Hello and welcome to Fuel Power. Today we are at the National Motor Museum at Beaulieu for Simply Electric, a day which is all about electric vehicles. And seeing as we have now got an electric vehicle of our own, we thought it was quite important we come down and have a look at the Beaulieu Sinclair C5. Of course we have one. It's not quite in as good a condition as this one. This one is comparatively almost pristine, if a little bit mucky in places. But hopefully one day the one we've got will be as good as this, but right now it isn't. Anyway, this one obviously a lot better condition, and I'm just going to say a little bit on the C5 whilst we're here. It was introduced in January 1985 to the British public, who were a little bit sceptical about it, to say the least, because it was being advertised as the future of personal transport, and let's face it, it really wasn't. If at best it was going to be an e-bike, but admittedly it was something ahead of its time, because now in 2022 there's a lot more safety, shall we say, a lot more things for cyclists to make it safer for them on the road, such as cycle lanes, much better crash helmets, much better cycle clothing, I guess. And generally there's a lot more awareness amongst car drivers these days about cyclists, whereas back in the 80s there wasn't so much. The C5 is already quite a low thing, which means one of the biggest worries of these were that lorries wouldn't see you, or vans. But if you look at it next to the PLP50 that I have actually sat in this particular one at Simply British Classics in 2021, it really is an incredibly low vehicle. This looks low, this looks even lower, but this you're likely to get a lot more visibility from other traffic with, just because it is that little bit taller. You could get a mast that goes on the back of these things, which you can see those two little black plastic lugs on the back, that's where the mast goes into. But this one doesn't have it. This vehicle, I believe, was donated to the museum by Sinclair Vehicles from Camberley when production ended, because of course, although at the time it was a huge failure, it was still significant in the journey of the electric bicycle. It was introduced in 1983, taking advantage of new legislation that permitted electrically powered cycles with less than 4 wheels to operate on British roads. They could do this without the need for road tax, or driving licence, or insurance, which is brilliant. It meant that anybody over the age of 14 could then ride them on the public roads. Supposedly, the idea was to build up to 100,000 of these per year at the Hoover factory in South Wales. A 2-seater and 4-seater family car were planned to follow in, I guess, this sort of style and this sort of vein. Maybe not exactly the same, but it was designed to have those eventually follow. But by the end of 1985, there was a lot of concern for the safety for the aforementioned reasons. And by the end of 1985, less than 9,000 vehicles had been sold. When you think that 100,000 vehicles per year were meant to be made and sold, only to sell 9,000 was really massively below the target. So it was a huge failure in 1980s and ridiculed at the time. Nowadays, massive collector's item. But next to it, it was the vehicle that essentially was the next attempt at it, the Sinclair Zyke, 1992. Undeterred by the failure of the C5, Sir Clive launched the Zyke in 1992. A tiny little, I guess, not quite fold up, but certainly good enough for taking on to public transport such as buses and trains. Had a small motor located within the frame, which arguably was a better system than the C5, which comparatively looks huge. The battery can be recharged when riding downhill, which almost sounds like a bit of a precursor to the energy recovery brakes that we have on EVs these days, and even electric bicycles. Sir Clive had high hopes for the Zyke, plans to produce 10,000 per month, so about 120,000 a year, because I'm good at maths like that, which arguably was a higher target than he set for the C5. But the Zyke, like the C5, did not sell that well. Production ended after just 6 months, and only 2,000 of these things have been built. So these even rarer than that, but arguably this is a little bit cooler. Both of these basically ahead of their time. Nowadays, if you look, there's plenty of fold-up bicycles that can go on public transport. This is basically the precursor to that. The precursor to the e-bike, full stop. Sinclair was a fantastic man. He had great ideas on, obviously, the home computer, the calculator. He made things like that affordable for the masses in Great Britain back in the 70s and 80s. But sadly, these will always be looked back on as the great failures of the company. Whereas now, if you look at it, if these were brand new in 2022, okay, maybe not so much the C5 because it's wild and wacky styling, as amazing as the story is behind this would certainly have done well if sold brand new today. This maybe would have sold better, I guess, to a younger market because it could be seen a bit more as a toy, but a road legal one at that. But either way, I'm really looking forward to getting dug into my C5 project at home, and hopefully I'll have it ready in time for Simply Electric 2023. Fingers crossed though, we can only hope. Lovely little vehicle. Look, it's a Sinclair C5. Another one, second one. So we've just come off the monorail after having spotted this. Now, of course, they've got a Sinclair C5 inside of the museum, which we've already had a little bit of a look at, but this is somewhat different. This is known as the C5. And to put it this way, this thing is currently, as this video has gone up, not on TV yet, but it will be on Top Gear, I believe, ridden by Freddie Flintoff. They're doing some feature on the Sinclair C5. And this has basically been turned into a toboggan. Now, for those who are worried that this is likely an original C5 that's been cut up, because if we have a look at the front, it has quite clearly been widened. And if we have a look at the back, the rear light that they've got on here sort of tells you everything you need to know about it. It is massively wider than usual. Same with the boot lid, that clearly doesn't fit, and we got all this on as well. But if we have a look, it's all fiberglass, so I think the only original bits on here that will have come from a C5 are the likes of boot lid, rear light, front light. The stickers are obviously custom made. Indicators, these are worth a lot of money these days on the C5. And also hubcap trims. Obviously we're around the back of the museum. This thing isn't actually officially on display yet, but if you just go on the monorail, which of course goes past there behind Genevieve, who's waving, you can clearly see it. So we just thought we'd come around the back here and have a quick look at it. But yeah, this is going to be used as a toboggan on the next series of Top Gear, which, as I've already mentioned at this point, not on TV as of yet, but who knows when that'll be on. The trailers and adverts have been on, so fingers crossed it'll be soon. But yes, does not look original to me. It looks to be a model of the C5 that they've made custom for a toboggan, based around this platform frame. But it's something different, and obviously it gives a bit of light to the Sinclair C5, which naturally in the 80s deemed a bit of a failure, but in today's climate will actually stand up pretty well. But there we go, I've talked enough. You got the Seatbelt seat belts in here for the tobogganing, and this is the Ski 5 here at Beaulieu.